Have you ever lost a ton of sleep? I have. It was due to an infestation. I lost a ton of sleep. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Minister Shauna Watson, and this is Solid Rock's Wednesday night Bible study. I want to tell you a story about an infestation, because the title of this Bible study is Spiritual Infestations. So let me tell you the story about how my house got infested, and then I'm going to tell you a Bible story about how the house of David got infested. So it all started when my son, his name is KJ, he started getting bed bug bites at night. Now at the time we didn't know it was bed bugs, we just knew he was getting bites at night. He started getting the bites at night, and then he went and slept on the couch. And at the time we said, why are you sleeping on the couch, son? And he said, well, something's biting me at night. So my husband at the time said, well, the luggage in his room probably could be transferring bed bugs to his bed. So all we need to do is get some spray and some dust, and they'll go away. And me being ignorant to the destruction of what bed bugs can do to your home, said, okay, Superman knows what he's doing. We'll get the spray and the dust, and they'll go away. It'll be done. So we go get the spray, we go get the dust, we take the covers off, and we spray and we dust. But by that time, my daughter says, hey, I'm getting bites too. So Superman says, well, we'll spray and dust her room and wash. And that's all we have to do. So we spray and dust their rooms, and maybe a day later they say, we're still getting bites. And Superman says, well, it's going to take some time. They probably got into, the beds a little bit. We got to kill them. So I'm like, okay, Superman knows what he's doing. I don't know about these bed bugs, but he does. It's a small infestation probably. So the next night, I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm covered with bites, covered. I am mortified. I'm horrified. And I said, Superman, what happened? They're spreading everywhere. Superman says, well, we're going to have to spray and dust our bed too. So we pull the covers off at the middle of the night, and we spray and dust and go back to bed. The next day, we're still getting bites. It's ridiculous. I say, you know what? I'm going to have to take this into my hands because Superman doesn't know what he's doing. I call Exterminator out. Exterminator says, you know what? Your beds are infested. Your house is infested. Those mattresses, they got to go. Everything has to go. So we were left looking like refugees in our own house. We were on air mattresses in the living room. Our clothes were in trash bags. And we were left thinking, how could one little bug do this to us? But that's how it went. So a few days passed, and we're still getting bites. I'm spraying off. I'm swatting myself all the time because I'm afraid they're on me. I go to work. I dream about my house burning down. It was a mess. One day I get home, and Superman's trying to dust and figure things out. I said, you know what? I'm sick of this. I'm leaving. I go check into a hotel, left the kids, left Superman, and I said, I just need time to think. I get on Amazon.com and I say, bed bug sprays. There was an all-natural spray. It had 5 stars. People were raving about it. They were saying it was wonderful. And I said, I'm going to get it. So I get this all-natural spray. I go home, and I douse myself in it. And I spray all our clothes. I spray the bed. And slowly but surely, the infestation leaves. And we can live normal again. And we could get beds, and life was normal again because the infestation had gone. So I said all that to say this. Your spirit can get infested with things. If you open it up, it can get infested. So let's talk about it. let's talk about a biblical example of an infestation. King Solomon, he loved women, loved women. He had 700 wives, 300 concubines, loved them. Let's read about it. Turn to 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 through 6. Now King Solomon loved many foreign women. Besides Pharaoh's daughter, he married women from Moab, Ammon, Edom, Sidon, and from the Hittites. The Lord had clearly instructed the people of Israel, "You must not marry them, because they will turn your hearts to their gods." Yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and in fact, they did turn his heart away from the Lord. In Solomon's old age, they turned his heart to worship other gods instead of being completely faithful to the Lord his God. As his father David had been, Solomon worshiped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. In this way, Solomon did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He refused to follow the Lord completely, as his father David had done. So, this is a pivotal point. Solomon began an infestation in Israel. He did this by marrying these foreign women. He married these foreign women, and they pulled his heart towards their gods. He went against God's decrees and God's warnings and married these foreign women, and he started an infestation. In modern times, this happens. You may see a devout Christian, you may have a devout Christian friend, and all of a sudden they start dating somebody who's Buddhist or Muslim or Jehovah's Witness or atheist, and all of a sudden their heart starts to turn away from God, and they start worshiping the same God that their significant other worships. And that's what happens when you get with someone who's unequally yoked. And that's a tool the devil will use. And it's a small infestation like that that can cause generational curses. And that's what happened. That infestation Solomon started by marrying those women, started an infestation in Israel. And I'm going to read to you what happens, because God punishes Israel because Solomon turned his heart away from God. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 35 through 37, God says, "I will take the kingdom from his son's hands and give you 10 tribes. I will give 1 tribe to the son, so that David, my servant, may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I chose to put my name. However, as for you, I will take you, and you will rule over all that your heart desires. You will be king over Israel." So right there, Jeroboam, who used to be Solomon's servant and now is a rebel against Solomon, is being awarded 10 tribes of Israel because of Solomon's quest for women and turning his heart away from God. And so what was owed to Solomon's son, Rehoboam, is now being taken away. And all the wisdom and all the anointing that was in David's house has now gone, is now being taken away because of Solomon's selfish decision. And nowadays, generational curses happen. You see it in families where the mother or father starts drinking alcohol, and it passes on to the children, and then their children, and then the grandchildren, and it runs generationally. And that's how generational curses can start. It just infests one seed, and that seed can transfer from parent to child to grandchild to great-grandchild. And until you ask God to intervene, it can continue. And God can continue to punish because of that one infestation. And God defines generational curse in Exodus 20:5. I'll read it for you. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods. I lay the sins of the parents upon the children. The entire family is affected, even children in the third and fourth generation of those who reject me. So if you choose Patron, Louis Vuitton, sex over God, it can not only affect you, but it can affect generations, and it can continue to affect them for years and years and years. And when that generational curse started, there was no longer an anointing over Solomon's house. So when Rehoboam became king, he no longer had that wisdom that Solomon possessed. And I'm going to show you an example of where it shows that wisdom that God had anointed them was now removed. So if you turn to 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 3 through 12, I'm going to read. The leaders of Israel summoned him, and Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel went to speak to Rehoboam. Your father was a hard master, they said. Lighten the harsh labor demands and the heavy taxes that your father imposed on us. Then we will be your loyal subjects. Rehoboam replied, give me 3 days to think this over, then come back for my answer. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father. His father, Solomon. What is your advice, he asked. How should I answer these people? The older counselors replied, if you're willing to be a servant to these people today and give them favorable answer, they will always be your loyal subjects. But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men and instead asked the opinion of the young men who had grown up with him and were now his advisors. What is your advice, he asked them. How should I answer these people who want to lighten the burdens imposed by my father? The young men replied, this is what you should tell them, those complainers who want a lighter burden. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I'm going to beat you with scorpions. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as the king had ordered. So Rehoboam, instead of listening to wise counsel, listened to counsel of his youth. And the older people that had counseled Solomon when he had wisdom, when he had God's anointing over him. And then instead of using that same wisdom and saying, I'm going to use wise counsel, he used youthful counsel. And the people ended up turning against him. So I would give an example of when I no longer had the anointing of God on me and there were some deaths in my family, I took the advice of someone who was atheist. And because I took that advice, I suffered financially, spiritually, mentally, and physically. Until I asked God to come back into my life, I continued to suffer. So Rehoboam affected the whole house of Israel by making a poor decision, just as his father Solomon did. And in the 208 years of the kings that ruled over Israel, there were 33 kings, and only 5 did right in the sight of God. That's what the infestation of Solomon caused. It is so important to keep your spirit guarded. It is so important not to let things of this world get into it. It is so important that the devil's tools don't become things that impact you and your spirit. I know now when I travel, this magical spray, I spray it inside my luggage because I travel with plastic luggage so that the bed bugs don't impact into the plastic. I spray the inside of the luggage and I spray the bed that I'm sleeping in, just in case. I also have encasements all around my mattresses because I want them protected in case something happens. That's why you have to protect your spirit. Make sure that anything that can try to interfere with your relationship with God can be stopped. I hope you enjoyed this Bible study. This is Minister Shauna Watson. Have a good night.